So I want to begin by telling you that partly what I'm going to say is going to upset you. And so I want you to remember that I'm just the messenger. I didn't make these things happen, but I do want to honestly tell you, if you would like a much more comfortable version of this, then just turn on your television or radio whenever you have a free moment on the toilet and you can hear the make-believe. Because we live now in a weird time, weirder and in different ways from what we were used to. This country is, as Dr. Dr. Leon, I keep wanting to call him Wilmer because we've gotten to be friends, but yeah, as he pointed out, we live in a time of decline. And then when an empire declines, which is something we haven't gone through because empires don't decline very often. So, but let me tell you from the history books, a little bit we can tell, it's not fun to be in a declining empire. Much more fun when the empire is going up, which was the last century or a century and a half of this country, the ride up. We are now on the ride down. We haven't been prepared because we have leaders who cannot say a word about that. I want to just drive that home because the split in this country is really about that. So let me start with the split in the obvious way. This Monday, we are having a national celebration of two key events. One that you hear about every day, all day, the inauguration of a new president. It's also the anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King. Same day. Wow, how different one celebration from the other. Who's celebrating what? You might say, and you wouldn't be far wrong, that those celebrating Mr. Trump are probably also celebrating the assassination of Mr. King. And those that are mourning one are likely also mourning the other one of those two events. But it's a country split between those on the one side of that and those on the other. And that split is everywhere now. And if you haven't noticed it yet, you will, because it's going to impact your life in all kinds of ways. So one of them to start, is a little bit about what a declining empire means, just to give you the context. The United States lost the war in Vietnam. When I say that in my classes, my students look at me. They've never heard such a thought. America, as they know from the comic books they read as children, only wins wars. It doesn't lose wars, but we lost. The war was fought against the Communist Party of North Vietnam, which has been running that country since the United States was driven out in 1975. Go check all of this. You will find I'm not making it up. After we lost the war in Vietnam, we went and had a big war in Afghanistan, which we also lost. That war was against the Taliban, which now runs that country, which is a good sign that you lost. We lost the war in Iraq. We are in the process of losing the war in Ukraine. But the split in the country is, if I were in certain audiences, I wouldn't dare say what I just said, because they couldn't hear it. They could not hear it. And I wouldn't be able to get anything else across, so I couldn't start that way. I'm a teacher. I'm not going to try to lose my audience.
Hello brothers and sisters, welcome back to the channel. I'm hoping that you are doing great from wherever you're watching this video from. Now, as you know, Richard DeWolf is an economist professor, and these are the things that he said before Trump joining in to say it. And I think that there are those people that have studied Mr. Donald Trump and they know who he really is. And that person, amongst one of the people that knows Donald Trump, is Richard DeWolf, because everything that he said about Trump and the condition of America and how it's going to be worse is what we are envisioning today. Brothers and sisters, we are envisioning a decline of an empire. And Richard DeWolf, taking you back like somewhere close to 2 years ago, or close to 2 years ago, right? Yeah, somewhere close to 2 years ago. This is what Richard DeWolf said about Mr. Donald Trump. And he said that Trump was going to be making the life of Americans hard. People were laughing in the congregation. People were joking. But right now, we are envisioning what we call the falling of an empire. And we have stages of a declining empire. Right now, the stage at which the United States has reached, it's close to full-blown. Yes, I just said full-blown. Why? Because America is turning away from what it was known. America is turning away from the land of opportunity. America is turning away from that what was considered as the land of hope, as the land where people's dreams came true. They called it the American dream, where things were fair, where things were equal to anyone. But since Trump joined, things changed drastically. Yeah, America is where it is today. And America was warned that all this was going to happen. And brothers and sisters, what we are envisioning and what Richard DeWolf said is something that we are seeing. Understand that people like Richard DeWolf are people that have studied different economic patterns. And they have also studied how different leaders affect the economic pattern of a country. And the backbone of any country is economics. You could say politics, you could say geography, you could say anything. But understand, the leader that you choose and the leader that America chose is what has really escalated America to be where it is today. So brothers and sisters, as you watch the video, please let me know what you all think about this. As you know, I'm your host and presenter, Eugenic Stories, and thank you for taking your time watching the video. For those watching for the first time, I'm your host and presenter, Eugenic Stories. Kindly consider subscribing, liking, sharing, so that this video can reach people who are like-minded like you. So let's watch the video. I'll be back.
Before I begin, but it is the reality. Let me give you a couple of more, just bits of getting what decline means. Last week, something happened on the part of a country called Indonesia. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a remarkable country in Asia, made up of 18,000 islands in the Pacific. It's a huge country. The population of Indonesia is 280 million people. Makes it one of the largest countries in the world. Let me remind you, the population of the United States is 330 million. 280 isn't that far less than 330. It's an enormous thing what they did. They joined the BRICS. They joined a full partner of the BRICS. BRICS, by the way, means it's the first letters of the countries Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. A dozen years ago, they began to form an alliance of what came to be called the Global South, to be independent, relatively, from the domination of the United States. And the core economy there, the biggest one, the most powerful, is, I'm sorry to tell you this, I know it'll come as an upset, the People's Republic of China. Remember, I'm the messenger. I have no responsibility for this at all. China and the BRICS. Indonesia joined them. Together now, the BRICS, built around China, have as the population of the countries that are part of the BRICS, about 22 countries now altogether. They have about 55 to 60% of the population of the world are members. What is the percentage of the world's population of the United States? 4.5%. You understand? We are 4.5%. They are 50 to 60%. In the words of, Mickey Mouse, uh-oh. Those odds are not so good, no matter how you cut it. And as a group, let me tell you how you cut it. We in economics have this little game. We ask, what is the total output in goods and services in a year of a country? Gives us a kind of rough idea of how big a country it is, how important its footprint is in the world. Okay, so if you take the BRICS together now, they are about 35%, maybe a bit more. Total output of the world. If you add up each of those countries' total output in a year, and you add them up, they account for 36%, more or less, of the world's output. Now let's compare that to the United States and its major allies. Those are called the G7, the group of seven. The United States, Japan, Canada, Britain, France, Italy, and Spain. And Britain, excuse me. Okay, that used to be the dominant player of the world. That used to be what world trade meant, what they did. Together they, that's all of them, now account for about 28% of the world's output. Do you understand? The BRICS is now what the United States was, but is no more. Now, if you're looking to where the wealth is, you go east, not west. If you're a poor third world country, as we used to call them, and you need money for a build railroad, or you need to find places to sell your exports, you direct your diplomats first to go to Beijing, because that's where it's at. If you can't get a good deal there, well, you might go to London or Washington. But whatever you are doing, you're going to play them against each other. You're going to say to the Americans, oh, that's the best you offer? Let's go the other place, see what they offer. You want to know why most of the railroads being built in Africa today are being built by the Chinese? There's your answer. They got a better deal. Everything is changing because of this, except here, where the make-believe is the way this country is dealing with this. Denial. You know, we ought to ask Dr. Fra to help us with the understanding psychologically. We all know it from our personal lives, right? When we've lost a friend or a lover, and we had to wait until all our friends told us what we couldn't face ourselves. Well, we are the friends in this country who are being unable to vent. That's why what Indonesia did last week is something I'm not going to ask how many of you noticed it, because nobody will raise their hand. How could you? Make-believe made sure that that was not on the newspaper's front page, or in most newspapers on any page ever. How many of you know that the Chinese are now the fast-growing dominant economy in the world? We're not. We haven't been for a while. Every major high-tech firm in this country has an analog. Has an analog in China. When we heard earlier that there was an offer by China and by Russia to work with the United States earlier, which the United States turned down, that's part of denial. They didn't just turn it down then, they turned it down now. One more example, and then I'll stop and tell you what this all means. 15 years ago, every automobile company on this planet went to work trying to develop what they understood was the next wave in that business, which was putting aside the gasoline-powered car and substituting an electric-operated car or truck. By the way, not a rational response, because it's terribly wasteful to have that vehicle, which those of you who have it notice, sits on the street or in the garage most of its life. That's kind of, let's use a fundamental word, stupid. It's stupid. It's a waste of resources. that car could serve 20 people each day if it were managed properly. What do I mean managed properly? Well, like a car rental business, that's how they would manage that. Or those bicycles we can now just take off the rack and put back on. That's a rational way. If you want to avoid killing people, which private cars do, if you want to avoid air pollution, cars are the major cause of it, and on and on. Rational would be to go from the private car to a mass transit efficient system. A beautiful train every 5 minutes, a beautiful bus, even more beautiful, every 3 minutes, everywhere. That's it. Infinitely cheaper, much more efficient. And none of you have to worry about it, because wherever it's parked in the central lots, which we call car rental centers, there would be paid mechanics who make sure they're in proper condition. So the car would be in better shape, better cared for. The whole thing is nuts. And who is the person who invented this crazy bad solution to the fuel burning car? That genius who did this terrible thing? Elon Musk. That's what he did. He found the way that automobile companies could make a profit by taking us out of gas cars into electric cars. So 15 years ago, all the car companies said, hooray, here's how we hold on to our profits by making these private cars for everybody. And they all went to work to compete. And there was a winner. As of 3 years ago, one company figured out how to make the best quality electric cars and trucks at the lowest price, which is what competition is supposed to result. And I'm sure you all know the name of this company. It's the BYD Corporation. Let me do that again. B as in boy, Y as in yellow, D as in dog, BYD. Now, your faces give you away. You never heard of this place or this thing. What is it? Well, what did I just tell you? They won the competition for the entire new wave of cars and trucks moving across this planet every day by the millions. And you never heard of them. Why? Because they move everywhere except here. If you go to Europe right now, you'll see them all over the roads. BYD, and by the way, there's several Chinese car companies. They're not the only one. They're just the ones who did it best. Why don't you see them? Because we have a tariff started by Mr. Trump, raised by Mr. Biden. The tariff on the Chinese electric vehicles is 100%. So let me explain quickly what that means. The Chinese produce this wonderful thing, this electric vehicle, and let's take a simple number. $30,000 is what they cost for the car. You're an American. You need, therefore, to come up with $30,000 if, for example, you're a company that uses electric trucks to do part of your business. It's an input. You'd have to come up with $30,000 to get the truck. And then you'd have to pay 100%. Another $30,000 will going to Uncle Sam, who put the tariff. Tariff is just a word for a tax. It's a word for a tax on an imported good or a service, something that produced out of the country but brought in here for sale. That's what an import is, and tariff is the name of the tax you put on imports. We have been putting taxes on imports as a nation from the beginning, although throughout the history of the country, nothing new about it. But it's 100%, which means an American would have to buy that truck by giving China 30 grand for the truck, and Uncle Sam another 30 grand, and so with 60 grand, you get the truck. But of course, no one does that. Why? Because Ford and General Motors and Tesla will sell you an electric car or truck for a mere 40 grand or 50 grand or something like that. So who's helped by this? Ford and General Motors, they wouldn't be able to sell their crappy cars otherwise. We would none of us buy a $40,000 or $50,000 electric car if we're going to do that, and give BYD 30,000 for a better car rather than 40 or 50,000 to General Motors, however patriotic we might feel. And you know who knows it? Ford and General Motors. So they went to the president and they said, put that tariff there. It'll protect us. Of course, they didn't say our profits, which is the truth. It'll protect jobs. Whenever you hear a capitalist tell you about what they're doing to protect jobs, hold on to your wallet. Someone's reaching. Why is it false? Because this is a terrible act for most American producers. Think of yourself as a maker of shirts or of chairs or of software programs. You would like to buy the trucks you need to bring in your inputs, to sell and distribute your outputs. You're going to have to buy electric trucks. You'd like to buy the best one at the lowest price. Of course, you're competing with enterprises in France and in Germany and in Brazil and in Nigeria and fill in the blank. They're all buying BYD cars at 30 grand. You have to pay 40 or 50 to General Motors. You know what that means? They're going to defeat you economically. You're going to be loser. And when you lose, you're going to lay off your workers because you can't compete with the companies that can buy the biggest, the best, and the cheapest electric vehicle. Now multiply this by dozens of other commodities. China is winning. We are losing. Don't tell anyone. Because you live in a country which is pretending to itself that none of this is going on. It's either never discussed or we turn it around and we say, the Chinese are becoming aggressive in the world. Huh? They're doing what exactly we did. You know how the United States became a big, powerful country? By doing to Europe what the Chinese are doing to us. It's not new, it's not different. The only question is, why would it be surprising? What a strange behavior is going on here. Now, where is this taking us? And I have a few things, and that's all I really want to tell you. Mr. Trump is a problem. You've probably already noticed that. And one of the ways he's a problem is that he has come this far as a politician. He had a different life before. It's known as a playboy. So he went from a New York playboy to a national politician, maybe even an international politician. And he did it in one basic way. He understood, maybe it's not clear, he understood that America was in such trouble that the mass of people here were remarkably alienated from the conventional Republican and Democratic parties. They didn't feel those parties were doing much for them, which is true. That those parties weren't protecting them from a decline they couldn't quite pinpoint, but they felt, particularly over the last 30 years. Their budgets were squeezed. You might have noticed that 40 years ago, the level of household debt in this country was small. Nowadays, everybody is loaded with debt. I can add, if you're interested, that corporate debt is at a higher level than it's ever been in our country, and government debt. In other words, we are a country in debt on a scale we didn't imagine 10 years ago, let alone think we would have now. There's a name for companies that have been for several years so deeply in debt that they don't make enough profit, ready, to service their debt. That is, to pay the interest and the portion they have to repay. Now, we have a special name in economics for them. I kid you not, I didn't make this up. Zombie corporations, because they're dead. They're economically defunct. You know how they manage to survive when their profits aren't enough to cover their debts? They take on more debt to pay the debt they couldn't otherwise cover. That makes them more zombie-ish next year than they were this year, which is what's happening. You might wonder, who lends money to all these indebted people, businesses, and government? Well, let me start with the government, because if you thought the world was crazy before, wait till you get this. The two biggest creditors of the United States government are Japan and China. Japan number one, China number two. A few years ago, it was the other way. China was number one, Japan was number two. The United States is the biggest debtor country in the world by countries. The second biggest creditor of the United States as the biggest debtor is the People's Republic of China. Do you understand? The United States owes China $850 billion, roughly. It has to pay interest, of course, on that debt, like it has to pay on others, which means I'm here to tell you that a portion of the taxes every one of you in this room pays when you buy a bottle of beer or you smoke a cigarette or you pay your taxes, a portion of that money, you should be very pleased, is collected by the United States government, not used for houses or medical care or student loans, but shipped to China as interest on the debt to enable them to build their military capacity to fight the United States. Hello. I didn't make this up. On the other hand, think of it this way. These kinds of loans from Japan, from China, enable the United States government to spend all the money Dr. Leon told us about in Ukraine without having to tax us. Because you know what would bring the war in Ukraine to an end in about 10, maybe 11 seconds? If Americans had to pay for it. But we don't. The Chinese and the Russians, and China, by the way, supports Russia against Ukraine, but lends government money to the United States, which pays for the Ukrainians. Whoa. You think you ought to pay respect to a system working like this? Think. We are in a completely different world than we once were. The empire is declining. We are not strong. We are weak. We don't produce the bulk of the world's output. We don't control the bulk of the world's trade. The US dollar, which in 1950s, 60s, 70s was the global currency dominating all others, isn't anymore. Central banks around the country, which used to hold dollars as backing for their own currencies in their own countries because the dollar was as good as gold, it isn't anymore. So the dollar, from being 70, 80% of the reserves held by central banks, is now about 40%. Still important. We're still in a big industrial power, but nothing like we were. Now, Mr. Trump understood that in this changing world, Americans were being squeezed. And he was right about that. And you should understand that we're still in that situation, and Mr. Trump is president because of it. Here's how it works. Every empire, as it goes down, has the following procedure of handling it. The people at the top, the rich and the powerful, respond to the decline by saying, oh, this is terrible, but not for me. The top always offloads the difficulties and burdens of a decline onto those people less powerful and less rich than themselves. The emperor in Rome didn't suffer the way the average people did. The emperor in Persia or the emperor in Greece, it doesn't matter. All the empires show the same phenomena. Those at the top hold on, work harder than they used to hold on because they know damn well it's going down. And who can't do that are the people who don't have much power and the people who don't have much wealth. And so the working class has to be, one way or another, squeezed as you go down. And we, you, me, we're all being squeezed. And in our naivete, we turn to the Republican and Democratic Party. Protect us. They can't. Oh, they'll tell you whatever you want to hear. You know that. We live in that. But they can't do anything. Because the only real thing to do would be to say honestly to the people, our empire's going down, it's going to be a hard thing, and maybe we all ought to get together to try to get through this difficulty together. Oh, that would be an interesting idea. Would have a name like, I don't know, socialism. That would be rational, but we don't live rational. How do you squeeze the mass of people? A lot of ways. It's a little bit like that famous poem, how do I love thee? Let me count the ways. How am I going to screw the working class? Let me count the ways. So for 40 or 50 years, we make sure that unions can't function. They can't do what they were invented to do, help the workers get a better deal. Not going to get that. We're going to demonize unions. We're going to make every union look like it's, that movie On the Waterfront, a bunch of crooks that are grabbing your dues every week, et cetera, et cetera. You've been living your life in that kind of an environment. It's changed the last few years as working people begin to get it. And they are. That's part of what this meeting is a sign of. Beginning. The Starbucks workers are beginning, and the Amazon workers are beginning. The labor movement is kind of coming back to life, but it's coming late in the process of squeezing the working class. Here's another way you squeeze the working class. You have this thing which you say is some kind of mystery. It's called an inflation. So, what? An inflation sounds like something you do to a balloon. What is an inflation? In economics, it just means prices are going up. But now let's be a little bit more careful. If you know anything about the inflation of the last few years, here's a little statistic. The inflation has gone up faster than average wages and salaries of people. Okay, now I'm going to do this very difficult arithmetic. If the money you have to spend, your wages and salaries, are not going up as fast as the prices, there are going to be things you can't afford anymore. Really special, expensive things like eggs. Right? What? But will someone honestly tell you that the inflation is a way of squeezing the workers? Not. You look long and hard, you won't get it. The inflation in eggs is due to bird flu. Huh? What? What? Look, I'm talking to people. I'm not going to be mean, but half of you believe that. And the other half of you think it might be true. Here's what an inflation is. It's a decision made by some people to jack up the price you have to pay for the things they can control the prices of. Who sets prices in a capitalist economy? Answer, the employer. Those of you who have had jobs all your life as workers, do you ever recall being called into an office to add your opinion as to what the price should be of what you helped to produce? Never happened. The United States Census tells us 3% of Americans are employers. Welcome to the other 97%. That's you and me. The employers set the prices. We pay them. When they jack up the price, that's because they want to give us fewer of whatever it is they make for the money we have to give them. It's a way of screwing the working class. And that's how it's been used in the last few years. And all these economics professors, including many of mine and people I know, sit around debating how are we going to control the inflation? What is it? And how does it happen? I sit there, I'm one of their students, and I want to run up there and hit them over the head with a ping pong paddle. What are you doing? What is this noise coming out of your mouth? And then their decision, which really at this point, I hope I'm getting to you, you're getting upset. Their decision is we're going to deal with it by raising interest rates. Oh, wow, this is wonderful. Who gets screwed when you raise an interest rate? In case you're not rich yourself, I'm going to tell you, it's not rich people. They don't give a flying whether the interest rate is 2%, 6%. They're rich. That's what it means to be rich. You don't care. But you have to care because it's going to mean that little bit of money at the end of the month that you have to pay on your credit card is going to be bigger than it was before. And everything works like that. The rich don't care. You know what that's like? It's like, I'm going to stick it to you now for a moment, congestion pricing. Oh, good. We have a problem in New York with traffic. This should come as hot news. It's only been true for a century. And we're going to finally do something. Oh, really? Yeah, what? We're going to tax everybody the same. What? The same. A rich person who will not give a damn, and the poor person for whom this adds up as an extra buck or two every time you do something, if you have to come in and out of Manhattan, etc., etc. Only an American politician who's just seen what inflation has done to people would come up with that solution. And by the way, raising interest rates, because I can see it perked some of your interest, is that the only way to deal with an inflation? Of course not. Why did you ever think it? Answer, because that's what you were fed all the time in all the media. The last time the United States had an inflation as bad as the one a couple of years ago, right, was back in the late 70s and 80s. We had funded the war in Vietnam by printing a lot of money because otherwise the people would have revolted against it. If you'd said to everybody, we're having a war in Vietnam, it's going to cost every family a couple of $1,000 a year. Whip, end of war. So we borrowed. We printed money and we borrowed. And then we had the terrible inflation. And then a conservative Republican president, Richard Nixon, went on the television August 15th, 1971, and said, I'm going to do something about this terrible inflation. Oh, good. There was tremendous suffering in the country and a lot of pressure. And put that together with the problems with the war, he had to do something. So he declared a wage price freeze that day, 15th of August. As of tomorrow morning, he said, this conservative Republican president who became president by becoming the champion of anti-communism. As of tomorrow morning, he said, any business that raises its prices, we will come for you, we will arrest you, and you go to jail. Guess what? The next morning, inflation vanished. Amazing. Are you surprised? Shouldn't be. Is this a story about how you control an inflation? Yeah. Did it work? Yeah. Did it happen in the United States? Yeah. Do you know about it? No. No. And the people at the Federal Reserve who decide interest rates, they made sure not to ask about it, not to talk about it, not to debate it. Let me give you another example. because I think I perked some of your interest. In the early 1940s, the United States decided to enter and fight World War II. And the economists, who, by the way, included a significant number of Marxists and socialists, because in the 1940s, they would be hired by President Roosevelt at the time because they were considered the most reliable anti-Nazis, anti-fascists. So people like Galbraith, whose name you may know, Paul Sweezy, Harry Magdoff, people, very important people on the left of American economics, were working in Washington. And they went to Roosevelt and they said, okay, you got a problem. You're about to fight a war. You're going to move all these resources, factories, railroads, to work on a war, to supply the army, supply the navy, and
Hello brothers and sisters, welcome back to the channel. I'm hoping that you are doing great from wherever you're watching this video from. As you know, I'm your host and presenter Index Stories. Now, the following are the predictions that Richard DeWolf predicted and how Trump was going to be making the life of Americans difficult. First, tariffs are a hidden tax on consumers. Economists like Richard DeWolf warned that Trump's tariff strategy, including a blanket 10% tariffs on all imported goods, will have grave economic effects on American consumers and lead to a recession. When importers are charged more, the costs are passed directly to the U.S. consumers through higher prices, effectively acting as a tax increase on Americans and pushing inflation higher. Didn't we see the tariff issue draining the American? And it really did. And tariff wars started, and it was crazy. Tariff war between the U.S. and China. It's really crazy. And it was really crazy. Tariff wars and how it really affected Americans. You all saw. And we are still seeing its effects, the ripple effects that it has towards American citizens, because it increases the prices of goods and services, and this is how it affects everyone. The second thing that he predicted was stagflation. What is stagflation? Stagflation is rising prices with a stalling economy. You see, if the prices of goods and services are rising, and even the economy and everyone's life is getting improved, then it's better. But we are seeing a situation where the prices of goods and services are increasing, but the lives of American citizens is still stagnant. So Wolf predicted the U.S. is moving towards stagflation, a mix of rising prices and economic slowdown. So by the late 2025, erratic tariffs, sanctions, immigration crackdowns are weakening the country's competitiveness and reliability. Another prediction that he gave that I'm getting to see happen is mass deportations. He predicted that mass deportations will drive up costs. Let me explain. Trump's plan to deport millions of people will set off a chain of reaction. That's in construction. Companies forced to hire citizens at higher wages will raise their prices, pushing houses and infrastructure costs even higher. Agriculture will struggle with labor shortages, leaving crops unpicked and food prices climbing. So you all saw what really happened and what is really transpiring until today. All that is happening. We saw Trump wanting black people to work on black farms because the agricultural sector is crumbling. And we are getting to see all these things in real time. Tax cuts that benefit the wealthy, not working people. That's another prediction that he gave. Now, the biggest single thing Trump did in his first presidency was the tax cut that was on December 2017. And the tax cut expires in 2025, prompting a debate about roughly 4 trillion in new tax cuts, with the central question being who really benefits. Wolf argues that these cuts flow upward, not to the working class. That's how all these things works. Another prediction that he gave is getting Social Security Administration. Yes, the Trump administration has forced SSA through a radical downsizing, indiscriminately pushing out 7,000 workers in the largest staff cuts in the SSA history, resulting in fewer staffing service Social Security applicants and beneficiaries. As of mid 2025, 1 million people are waiting for decisions, the result of decades of understaffing made worse by the Doge cuts. Really crazy. Just by seeing what is really happening, you can tell we have a lot of people in the Trump administration that has been removed. People who are also working in these places that have been removed. So getting to understand and getting to see that tremendous downsizing in Trump's administration is really another thing. Now, the sixth prediction that Dr. Richard DeWolf gave was closing Social Security offices. Yes, Dodge has targeted SSA fields offices for closure across multiple states, negatively impacting customer service. The cuts will make in-person appointments harder to get and to keep, forcing people to wait longer and travel further. That's how crazy it is, right? So we have deep cuts to Medicaid as the seventh prediction. Trump proposes to cut some 15 billion from the Department of Health and Human Services after slashing the workforce that administration Medicare and Medicaid, with Medicare reduction already enacted in 2025, set to reduce spending by roughly 1 trillion over 10 years. The eighth prediction that Richard DeWolf gave is attacking disability benefits. Yes, the Trump administration is reportedly preparing a proposed rule that could reduce the share of applicants who qualify for Social Security disability insurance by up to 20%, which will be the largest cut in SSDI history, disproportionately harming people in South Appalachia and Rust Belt State. That's really crazy move. That's really crazy move over there that Trump is trying to do. The ninth prediction that Richard DeWolf gave, a billionaire-stacked government serving the wealthy. True. Wolf argues that Trump administration filled with billionaires and mega millionaires whose wealth is increasing while working people struggle is not a contradiction, but just a feature. We are being extracted. We are not part of an economy. We are an extraction system. So sad, but that's the truth. That explains to you why we have the top 1% and the bottom 99%. That explains to you everything that you should know. And the 10th prediction that he gave that we are still seeing until today is the dollar's decline and U.S. economic weakness. It's true. Everyone is losing faith in the U.S., and we are all getting to see this happen in real time. People are losing hope in the United States, and we are seeing this thing happen, brothers and sisters. Now, since Trump took office, the dollar has dropped between 8 and 12%. A fall Wolf sees as an evidence of weakening U.S. leverage. While the continued slide of the dollar adds pressure, shaking the foundation of the U.S. economic strength, Wolf sees this as part of broader long-term imperial decline that Trump's policies are accelerating rather than reversing. So, to conclude, Wolf's argument is that Trump's policies, this includes tariffs, deportations, tax cuts for the rich, and putting public services, are sold as protecting working Americans, but functionally transfer wealth upward while making every life more expensive and precarious. So, brothers and sisters, please let me know what you all think about this. As you know, I'm your host and presenter, Agent Stories, but until then, peace, love, and harmony. Salute.